sharp. It's going down.
This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I am your host, Ramses Ja. And sometimes the amount of stories that make their way to us means that we simply can't cover everything that comes our way. But from time to time, a story just stays with me, and I feel compelled to share it with you and give you my thoughts. And now, one more thing. Okay, so you're going to have to forgive me for doing things a little different today. I have to start with my own voice, and then I'm going to play a clip for you. And the reason is because you're about to hear some goofy content. And I need you to understand that it is just that. All right, let's get to it.
I'm James T. Harrison. I have something to say. It was inevitable. After having done everything they could to humiliate, castrate, and force white men to prostrate themselves at the altar of woke, they're now coming after black men. The woke has no choice. If your whole existence is about identifying and destroying your oppressor, once you have vanquished them, what else do you do but find another oppressor? One columnist summed it up precisely, clinically actually, because intersectionality works best with a complicated field of eligible candidates with a broad range of grievances. It must also have a steady diet of people to find guilty of the insult du jour. And black men are now on the list of potential offenders. You heard me. Now we have black male privilege, and it must end. Black men must accept their guilt and pay their dues. Campus Reform has the list, which is part of this Project Humanities initiative.
Okay, so let me stop right there. I'm going to go back and review all this, but I just want to remind you that you're listening to some nonsense. I'm not going to play it all, but I'll play a little bit more because I got to touch on a few more things. So let's get back to it.
This is playing out on the campus of Arizona State University, and here are some of the most absurd admissions black males must accept as their privilege. When I read African American history textbooks, I will learn mainly about black men. Oh no. Or, I will be taken more seriously as a political leader than a black woman. Oh, tell that to Barbara Jordan. And then there's, I have the ability to define black women's beauty by European standards in terms of skin tone, hair, and body size. In comparison, black women rarely define me by European standards of beauty in terms of skin, hair, or body size. Okay, I'm beginning to suspect that this was written by an ugly, angry, obese black woman. Yes, I'm talking radical feminism. Why do I say that? Well, because all of the grievances happen to be centered around women. Only a black woman would see it as a grievance that a black man doesn't have to worry about the daily hassles of having their hair conforming to any standard image of beauty the way black women do.
Okay, so that gentleman, of course, is James T. Harris. He is a conservative radio personality. Funnily enough, based in my hometown, Phoenix, Arizona. Someone I've never met, nor have I ever heard of. And I can see why. But he has a platform, for better or worse. And unfortunately, he is also black, which is heartbreaking to me. And I'll take it a step further. He also has space here as well. And I don't love that. But to be fair, this is a place where ideas are shared and opinions are fleshed out. And this is just what we do. So I'm sure he feels like he has to stomach the content that I make as a bleeding heart liberal just as much as I have to stomach that nonsense that he's spewing. But this was put in front of me because, if I'm honest, my producer knows what kind of gets me fired up. So this is what we're talking about today. Black male privilege. So let's break down what he was talking about. The first thing that I take issue with is he says that, this movement of wokeness or whatever was meant to humiliate, castrate, and force white men to prostrate themselves at the altar of woke. And I think that without context, that simply sounds like there is a movement that exists to actively harm white men simply because they are white men. And if you don't look beyond, the headline, the surface level, that might be what your takeaway is. But of course, it is not that. White men, Christian, straight, are our brothers, the same as anyone else. And we recognize that a lot of their ancestors shaped the world in such a way that it would benefit them and, by extension, their posterity. And so we have white men still benefiting from that. Some are aware, hey, things might be a little easier for me over here than it is for folks over there. And others, if I'm guessing, are aware, but just feel like that's the way it should be. They think that they are the great conquerors and they got everything honestly and fairly. And this is the way things are. And they see no need to change things. And you have a very large conservative base that perhaps subscribes to this belief system. But we have to deal with real problems here. And so forcing people to prostrate themselves at the altar of work, or castrating them or humiliating them, isn't the objective. The objective is to get everyone to subscribe to at least some significant sections of a shared reality that we can all deal with as human beings, sharing time and space. And so, again, with more context, it fleshes out a bit more. He goes on to say that, now this movement is coming after Black men because the existence of the movement is about identifying and vanquishing oppressors. And that is just more nonsense. Nobody wants to be a social justice warrior. In an ideal world, there would be no need for a social justice warrior, right? In an ideal world, social justice wouldn't even be a thing. It would be a given. So this only exists out of pain, out of suffering, out of inequalities, things like this. So it's not like, okay, we got someone, at the altar of wokeness and now we're going after some other people because we simply want to do that. My belief is it's more about holding people accountable and making sure that people, again, subscribe to a shared reality. Because it's very easy to have your own reality and ignore what other people might be dealing with. So that's where he transitions to this idea about Black male privilege. Now, I want to remind you that I am Black male. And I recognize that my life is different than the life of a Black woman. There are more opportunities built into my narrative. There are just key differences. My sister shared a story with me when she was in college. She used to call me when she was getting out of school at night, walking to her car. I'm like, why do you call me every day? And she's like, Ramses, I just need you to be on the phone with me when I walk to my car. And I realized, oh my God, she just needs someone to hear her, keep her attention so that she doesn't have to take on conversations or, it's just a scary moment for her walking to her car at night. She wanted her big brother on the phone with her. That's not something I've ever needed to do. Ever. Fundamentally different lives, different realities. And I have to account for the fact that my literal sister has a different experience than I do. She has the same, more or less, genetic makeup, and yet an entirely different reality, or at least different in key areas. So yes, Black men, we have certain privileges. I believe that everyone, when compared rather to Black women, everyone has their different walk in life. Some things come easily, some things are a little bit harder fought. But for him to make it seem like, oh my God, now they're coming after us, they're woke and, just kind of, it's so funny because they talk about, liberal tears, but it feels like, when I see it, it feels like the biggest complainers are conservatives. And this black conservative, I forget his name, James, where'd it go? It doesn't matter. Is kind of echoing the sentiments of the master, if you will. You get what I'm saying? It's just kind of like one of those things. He probably gets lots of pats on the back for saying this sort of thing. And I don't really have a lot of respect for it, because you would think it'd be a lot easier to identify with a black woman than it would be to identify with the perspective of that white male who is very disconnected from a black woman's reality. And I don't want to profess to know too much about this man, because I don't, and God willing, I never will. But I do need to talk about this, because this is the sort of thing that gets into society and shapes a narrative that needs to be challenged. And that's what I'm here doing. So let's move on. Black male privilege. He says that as a black male, we need to understand that we learn more about black men in textbooks. Checks out. I've taken lots of African-American studies classes, literature classes, hip hop history classes, you name it. And yes, that's absolutely true. Absolutely. It's not to say that we don't learn about women, but overwhelmingly we learn about men, right? I don't think that that's someone telling me that, I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that I learn about men, because it's the truth. I don't believe that there's anything wrong with women wanting that to be more balanced, black women especially. The least respected woman on this planet is a black woman. I would love to see that equalized. And I can't challenge my Caucasian brothers and sisters to do that if I'm not willing to do it. I can't ask them to adopt a different perspective or put themselves in someone else's shoes if I'm not willing to do it myself, right? He goes on to say that another example of black male privilege is that we're taken more seriously as political leaders. Yeah, I'd go along with that. That's true. And if there's anything that I can do to bolster black women as they enter into the political arena so that they are taken more seriously as well, then I will do that. I will acknowledge that I have privilege. Maybe I might even be able to share this platform with women all the time, black women. He goes on to say that black men define the beauty standards of black women. And this is true. You know, I'll admit myself that I have dated more than just black women. My sons are half Mexican. Again, I grew up in Arizona. But I recognize when black women say this, that they're saying that black women, or black men rather, have the capacity to define those beauty standards, and it's not the same when reverse. I recognize that there is a factual basis for that. And what I choose to do with that helps me to establish who I am as a man as it relates to black women. I think that's something that is fair. We need to acknowledge that. And then he gets really mean. He goes on to say that he bets that this is a very ugly, angry, obese black woman who's a radical feminist. And, you know, again, in his mind, you know, he's seeing kind of that caricature of what a black woman is, the stereotype of what a black woman is. And it's a very harmful and hurtful thing. It doesn't account for the fact that, you know, obesity rates are higher with black women. And there's reasons, medical reasons for this. There's medical conditions that we have to deal with, you know, and so forth. And just a very, very calloused approach to this quote unquote black male privilege. And then he goes on to say that black men don't have to worry about their hair having to conform to standards of beauty. And as a black man with a big old afro, I beg to differ. So, again, you have to forgive me. This is something that I have to talk about. You know, I will call a spade a spade. I will not be any more harsh than I have been. This is a black man, and so I don't want to tear him down, but I will challenge falsehoods, things that I believe to be falsehoods. And I will call something clown shoes if in fact that's what it is. And this is clown shoes, top to bottom. But perhaps you disagree. And if so, I open the floor to you. Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. Let me know your thoughts. Or you can reach out to me on social media at Ramses Ja. Let's have this conversation. Does black male privilege exist? It just may. And if it does, maybe there's something I can do about it. And until I hear from you, peace. This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show is produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice, from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.